Hi, everyone. Welcome to Make the Change radio show. I'm your host, Patricia Terrell, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in today. The call-in number for the show is 1-800-450-7876. Whether you are a repeat listener or tuning in for the first time, it is my hope that this show will empower you to change your circumstances or help someone else to change theirs. Today's show is about blended families, which to me is the 21st century version of the famous TV sitcom that I grew up watching, The Brady Bunch. And as some of you may recall, The Brady Bunch was about two families and the issues they encountered blending their two families. Both adults had 3 children of their own. However, Mike, the dad, had 3 boys, and Carol, the mom, had 3 girls, which created some very interesting dynamics. Now, when it comes to blending families today, the ingredients for blended family success have become even more challenging. And according to the latest statistics, blended families are on the rise, with 2,100 new blended families being formed every day in America, and over 65% of Americans are touched directly by a step family scenario. So if you are single and dating with kids, or if you are already married in a blended family environment, my guest, Dr. Mangum, author of this incredible book called Blending to Make It: Ingredients for a Successful Blended Family, and he's here to help us figure it all out. So without further delay, Dr. Mangum, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I'm excited to be here to share some principles, and specifically 8 principles. And I recognize that this particular subject is not really talked about enough because we try to figure things out on our own. And so I am excited today to come on the air and share with you some valuable principles that will allow you to navigate through your blended family successfully.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there's one thing I forgot to mention earlier, is that this whole blended family arrangement is so new that 7 out of 10 pastors and church leaders in America, they really don't know where to turn to assistance on how to minister regarding step family dynamics.
Well, one of the reasons why that statistic is so real is that you don't get taught in seminary about blended families. We don't really talk about, the only thing we talk about in seminaries or give us some ideas about divorce. We don't talk about people having children that are married and then people that don't have children that are coming into this relationship. So a lot of times you have blended families in your church and you really don't know. So I really believe this is really important and vital that we have a blended family ministry, or we have someone that we can refer to that they can be successful as well. I know the traditional family is what our churches have, but I want to tell you the blended family is on the rise in the church.
Absolutely. So I gave the description of the blended family by comparing it with the Brady Bunch, but there may be somebody out there who never watched the Brady Bunch or may not know. So give us your definition of a blended family.
My definition of a blended family is definitely someone that has children. First of all, you may have a child and a person may not have a child, but notice that it's normally a mom and a dad coming from a marriage or coming from divorce and remarrying, or someone losing their spouse and have children. Children are involved. You can even be part of a blended family if you adopt. But the key principle in having a blended family, or what constitutes a blended family, is having children that are not related by blood.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, when I first got your information from my dear friend Winston, and he said, well, you had this book on blending families. Initially, I said, okay, well, I'm not sure how I can really stretch that out for an hour show. And then I spoke to you and I read your book and I was like, oh my God, it's just so much here on so many different levels, with single parents dating with children, the dynamics there, and also families who are already married and they have either the wife is bringing her child, the father is bringing his child, and then they come together and they have their own children.
Yes.
Some interesting dynamics. So I want to talk to you about why you wrote this book and what made you qualified to write it.
Well, I wrote this book because I really believe that I could be an instrument to be a part of saving families, to stay out of the divorce court as a blended family. That's very dear to my heart because of some of the life experiences I experienced. Number one, as a very young man, I think I was about 9 years old, when my mom remarried and I was introduced to my stepdad. And that was interesting because we were used to seeing my dad around or not around, but now we had a new individual in our lives that was considered our stepdad. The second thing, I was 22 years old, and I married into a family that had a young lady. She had 2 children. I did not know some of the dynamics and some of the things that went on in the relationship because I was young, I was immature. But later on in that marriage, we ended up having 2 kids of our own. And so therefore, I went from having a household of 4 to a household of 6. And so that was a challenge. And thirdly, after the divorce, unfortunately, because I did not have the principles in my book, I wasn't following the right principles, we end up getting a divorce. And I believe that if I would have had the principles, the 8 principles or other principles in my book that I've written, I believe that I would have been able to stay the course or even navigate through some of the difficulties. The third thing that I believe that qualifies me, after a few years, about 4 or 5 years, I met this young lady and we started dating. And during the course of the dating, and one thing that I do really think that's really, really important is that you qualify who you're dating. That as a single parent with kids, that you can't just casually date. And so therefore what I did, I began to, talk to the young lady. Did she have any children? And she did have children. She had a son from a previous relationship, and I had a son and a daughter from a previous relationship. So what happened, we had some commonality there. And so even though being a little more mature and then having some of these principles not yet in print, they begin to guide our relationship.
Absolutely. Now, and you have this tremendous experience from being a single dad with children. And
Wow. After the divorce, thank you, Patricia. Yeah, I was single dad for a while, and wow, oh my God, I had no idea of the challenges and the changes of trying to date someone and you already have parents. And young ladies that are listening, let me say this to you. I was very selective and very cautious in bringing my kids around the person I was dating, or, exposing myself to different things that wasn't healthy. And one of the things I want to tell you is that you have to be selective. One of the things that I made sure of when I was divorced, that I was seeking God. I didn't just want anybody to come around my kids. So young ladies that are single parents, I know you're doing a major job out there, but you need to have a God that can give you guidance, because your main job, I believe, and that was my main job as a male, is to protect my kids, to make sure I didn't put them in harm's way or put them in a situation where they can have negative bleed-offs from a person that I was dating.
Absolutely, because now you're looking at bringing your precious children into a household, an environment. So you want to watch what type of energy that you introduce by the person you end up loving and bringing into the household. That
Very
energy
much so.
is important.
It's very important. And also what we must understand, that we're molding our kids
To
be excellent children, to be excellent young adults, to be excellent citizens. And so if you distort that by, casually dating someone and then as a single parent and bring him into your children's life, then you can have some things that would not be healthy.
And so now you are successfully married. She brought children. You brought children into the family blended environment, and you've applied these 8 principles. And we want to share them with our listeners, because I'm sure somebody out there is in need of these. So in your book, you talk about 8 key ingredients for a successful blended family. So let's start with the first one. And you say, do not, and I mean, do not badmouth the bio parent.
Well, you're so right, Patricia. I am excited about that particular principle because it helps no one to badmouth anyone. Stepsons, stepdaughters, in-laws, or anybody. And a lot of time, if you're dating as a single person and you're thinking about getting into a relationship that has a blended family structure, if that person is negative, or they bring in a lot of negative things, or bad-mouthing their exes or the children biological parents, then you're kind of setting yourself up for negativity to go throughout this relationship, and therefore it will be passed on to your children. So single parents that have children, that should be a flag, because it also should share that maybe that person that's bad-mouthing that person are not being positive. Maybe they need some counseling. Maybe they need some help. Maybe they're not over some stuff. So you got to be really, really selective And that could be a deal break. That would be a deal breaker for me.
Wow. And that's pretty, I agree with you. I think that's very, very important. And you say absolutely no one should badmouth the bio parent, children, parent, the person you're dating. Let's make that clear. No one, none of that. So let's talk about the second one. Don't try to be a replacement parent.
That's not your job. Let me be honest with you. Dr. Mangum said that's not your job. Your job as a person that's coming into this family system is, number one, as a stepdad, as a stepmom, is to be the encourager, be the supporter. I'm not saying you should not have something to say, but your goal for the first few years or the first time is to make sure that you're building, that you're not breaking. And that's very important, that you do not be a replacement parent. Your job is to take care of the intangibles there, not to be their friend, but to be a responsible and loving adult. Be that gender role model for that child.
That I like that, because see, I don't have any children, and if I were to date a guy who are bringing children to our relationship, I would like to think that I could be a good role model versus being the replacement parent. I like that you said that.
Yeah, I think it's important that, you have an opportunity to change the whole dynamics of that child. By being, if you're a female, show her how to be a lady. If you're a male, show him how to be a man, a respectable man. A man that has desires and dreams and goals, and a gentleman. I think you can be a gentleman and not be a wimp. That's a myth. I know a lot of brothers that are strong and a lot of Christian brothers that are former athletes, but guess what? They're very gentle. And I know mothers are gentle. So I think that you play a significant role in the development and training of that child, whether it's a stepchild or whatever. You have a role there. Yeah,
and your book goes into a lot of detail on these 8 key ingredients, which I find just phenomenal. Now, you said don't expect things to be perfect.
Recognize that we're not perfect. Recognize we, honestly, the scripture said we were born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So we have some imperfections. We have some flaws. But here's the thing. A lot of times people go in there with these false expectations because maybe they've been married before, or maybe they've been in a serious relationship that has some quasi success. But the reality is you're moving forward. This is a whole new ball game. So, be open. Be open to what's going on. Be positive. Be ready to know that it's not going to be perfect, but it can be great if you apply these principles.
Absolutely. And I like what you said is about being consistent in your efforts and it not perfection. So you don't want to set up any false expectations that this is just going to be smooth.
Yeah, thank you, Patricia. You're right. The biggest problem when you deal with children in a blended family is that you're consistent, that you don't change, that you don't have 700 different personalities when something go down.
Wow, never thought about it like that. Why is that so key?
I think it's key because the children are struggling to get to know you. And then every time something goes wrong or every time something happens that you don't like, your whole personality changes. So they don't really get to know the real you.
Wow. So this one really gets to me. Let's say I have my children, he has his children, but you say don't play favorites. Not even with my own children?
Yeah, I think that when you play favorites, and the natural part of us as parents with children already before we bring in our stepchildren is to really nurture them and play favorites. And so we must understand the importance that those children need you. They need you to be a part of their lives in a positive way. And if you're shunning them because you want to connect with your children, then maybe you're not ready for this blended family relationship, because your job as a responsible mother, and even though you know how to love your own children, is to show them love and not to show favoritism, because look, they need a mom, or they need a dad that will treat them with equalness. And so you don't want to be treated with, less. You want to be treated equal as well.
So if there's like a family of 4, I have 2 children, he has 2 children, and I'm going out and I say, I'm going to get my child an iPhone 6, but I'm going to get everyone else maybe an iPhone 5 or something like that. And I say, look, don't let them know that I got you this iPhone 6 or whatever. And that may not be the best example, but can kids keep secrets?
First of all, that's funny. We know for real that children don't keep secrets. And parents don't keep secrets. But the thing about a child that's in this family system, they're going to want to one-up. They're going to say, nah, 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 nah. And I know that may be funny, but, this is what my mom bought me. So I'm better than you because I got the i6 and you got this hand-me-down phone. And so you're sending the wrong message. You're setting a precedence that your children are better than them. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful not to damage them even more emotionally because they come into a situation broken and they need that encouragement. So treat them fairly, and they're going to let you know. The kids are going to tell what they got from their mom or their dad.
Absolutely. So if you're going to buy one quality thing for one child, you better have the budget to buy it for all of them, right?
Correct. Definitely. Don't spend it unless you're going to get everybody.
Okay, so loving beyond the pain. What type of pain are we talking about here?
Maybe the pain of divorce. Maybe the pain of death. Maybe the pain of having a child out of wedlock and the person that you loved is no longer in your life, no longer in your child's life. Those are very deep emotional pains. You say, Dr. Mangum, how can you learn to love beyond the pain? Well, I'm a prime example because I went through something early on with my stepdad that he disciplined me pretty harshly. And it took me a while to forgive him and understand why he was doing that. And it took a while for me to love him. But my mom told me that he's going to be your dad. And what he did was a mistake. And you need to learn how to love him. And so if you don't learn to love beyond the pain, you can never love again. So if you're single and looking for that guy, and you haven't gotten this principle into your heart, into your emotions, then you really can't love him, and you definitely cannot love those stepchildren.
I can see that for sure, because I'm thinking about some friends I have nowadays with children being able to call the police if the parents discipline them. To me, that would be a tremendous pain as a parent to know that my child called the police when I was disciplining them, which got me into trouble. I can imagine if that happened to a stepchild. So that's a different type of pain, but pain is going to come. What do you say about that? I
think that we have to understand the importance again of managing pain. If you're a Christian, God has some specific principles. And he talks about, he said, come unto me that you are heavy burden. He said, because I can take care of your burden. Mm-hmm. Push your burden on me. He said, cast all your cares on me. See, a lot of times people like to keep pain because they like to stay miserable. They like to keep pain because that gives them, that one up. But you know what? You're not free when you can't release that pain. And you deserve to release that pain so you can love again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be, and in order to move on through the relationship, there's going to be pain throughout any relationship. So you got to learn to get beyond it.
You have to learn to get beyond that correctly.
Yeah. And so this is very appropriate that the sixth principle you talk about is to practice forgiveness.
Wow. This is one of the most powerful emotions and powerful principles as a Christian that we deal with. Forgiveness is not easy.
It isn't.
Especially, and I always look at forgiveness as, what's the level? That's what we do in our practical mind when we want to rationalize why we should forgive. They hurt me real bad. But as a Christian, as a person that wants to move forward and wants to take the power back in their life, you have to practice forgiveness, because I've recognized for myself, I would not be here today talking to this amazing woman about this amazing subject if I did not forgive the past hurts, the people that hurt me in my life. And I would not be a conduit, a hope, a conduit that you can do anything. And so lastly about forgiveness is that you have to be ready to do it according to the Christian commandment. Jesus said you have to forgive. One of the most powerful things that Jesus showed forgiveness was that the thief on the cross, he granted him his dying wish. He forgave him. And he said, today you will be in paradise with me. That's
amazing.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, it really is not easy. And neither is this seventh principle, is how to resolve conflicts effectively.
Conflicts are going to come in so many ways. And conflicts is a part of going into a new family system, going to a new relationship. But I think one of the things that allowed me, I talk about another principle in my book, is taking the highway, or the high road rather. And the high road means that it takes courage to say, you know what? I'm not going to take the last word. I'm going to make sure that the seas are calm. And so even if I have to surrender, if I have to quit arguing or quit making noise so that it can be peace. Because one of the things about conflict can only exist if it has another energy level. If two people are in conflict, people don't normally have conflict by themselves if they're in their same mind. Now, if they're not in their same mind, they may have conflict within themselves. But in order for me to take the high road, I thought it was really important that I asked God to help me to resolve it, and I stopped talking. Mm-hmm. I went and prayed about it. I went and took a ride. And so maybe that particular person won the argument. But you'll see in a little while, the storm begin to calm. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things about resolving conflict, is that you be the calmer, not the stormer.
Wow, I like that. And this one here is so incredibly powerful. And that's communication, the 8th principle. And it's not just a matter of what you say, but how you speak it. And that one thing we do not do too well, including myself, is how to listen. Tell me about it, Dr. Mangum.
Well, communication has been estimated as 55% is body language, 38% is tone, and 7% is actual words that are being spoken. One of the key things you must understand that language matters, how you say it, when you say it, and the reason you're saying it. One of the things that's very important that we must be able to listen. I've been told that I have the gift of gab, and I probably do. But one thing as a counselor and as a parent, I've learned to listen, not talk when my children are talking, but hear exactly what they're saying. And so it's very important that you display a conscious effort towards listening.
Indeed. And even though this one is not in your book, I'm adding your 9th principle. And you basically say that throughout your book, you have scripture that you better believe in a power bigger than yourself.
If you don't have a power that's bigger than yourself and going into this blended family system, and it's a great family system, I'm a living witness, but I would never have made it without God. I would never have made it without prayer. I would never have made it without the word of God. And even in the midst of my difficulties, even going through a divorce, I think early on in our relationship with my first marriage, prayer was the key. It didn't solve all the issues, but you need a higher power because you cannot do it by yourself. You need to tap into something that's larger and greater than yourself.
Okay, well, we just gave you 8 key ingredients for blending families successfully, plus a bonus.
Yes.
And so we're going to come back. We're going to take a quick break. This is Patricia Terrell with Make the Change Radio Show, and we will be back with Dr. Dwayne Mangum to discuss how to successfully merge 2 families as a single person dating or a blended family that already exists. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you right back. Okay, this is Patricia Terrell, and we're back with Dr. Dwayne Mangum, and we're talking about how to successfully blend families. And we're talking about it from the perspective, if you are single with children and you're in the dating scene, we're going to give you some real good tips on how you can, look out and identify and ultimately hopefully marry the right mate. And also, if you are currently in a blended family, then we're going to talk about what you can do to save your family if you're having some issues. Okay, so why don't we get started? And I'm going to ask you this from a single person's perspective. If I'm thinking about entering into a blended family arrangement with a guy who has children, what is the most important thing that I or anyone in that situation should do?
I think you need to ask some clear questions. You need to make sure that you're serious about going into a relationship like this. You need to ask questions. How are your kids? What are your perspective in bringing somebody else into the relationship that don't have kids? You didn't ask the question, okay, how are you with kids? Mm-hmm. What are your perspective on kids and education and nurturing, and having patience in those things?
Absolutely. And it's from different perspectives, because as a single person, you will want to know a lot about me in terms of if I'm mature enough to be able to come into your environment and be that gender role model for your children.
Definitely. You need to make sure that person is mature enough. Mm-hmm. You need to also make sure, looking at that person's finances, do you have the budget? Because you're coming into, as a single person, you're coming into a relationship that you're going to take on maybe 2 kids and a mother. And so I think it's really important. And then I think the third thing that's really important is that you need to have a relationship with God or some higher power. Because if you are a Christian mom, mm-hmm. raising your kids in a Christian home, You need to make sure that this person is a Christian. You don't want to come in and filter your kids with something that's going to take away from what you've been training them because you want to date this person. So basically, that person or persons need to be a husband or wife material. No longer casual dating.
Yes.
You got to go in this thing serious with the attitude that guess what? This person is going to be either a God-fearing woman or a God-fearing man that can add to the principles that I'm teaching my children. So, yes.
Absolutely. So I wanted, because you talked about so many great things, truly. And so let's say now we have two single parents with children who are bringing children to the forefront. Now the guy has a child or children, and so does the woman. Now they're looking at, wow, we need to address certain things. And one thing that I remember that you said early on was that, first of all, you have to be honest about everything in your life. And so what are some of the questions and things that couples need to talk about before they even think about blending their families?
They need to find out where they're going to live. Who's going to live? Whose house are they going to live in? Okay, what's the financial structure? Is there a budget in place? You know, what are some of the academic challenges of the kids? Are they bullies? You know, do they have learning disabilities? I mean, we need to be really honest about ourselves because this is a different environment. And see, I made the mistakes of not knowing some of these things or not asking some of these pointed questions. And I found out that when I got in, I was so overwhelmed.
Yes.
Because I didn't have the tools nor the maturity, nor did I know how to navigate. And so one of the things before you do any of this, these questions need to make sure, does your kids have bad behaviors? Are they bullies?
Yes. And how do the different parents discipline? Because, I mean, that's a big thing, too. You may come from a family of timeouts, and they may come from, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Well, I think that's one of the key things that happens in a relationship, that you need to talk about your disciplining philosophies. You need to talk about how we're going to raise these kids, how we're going to discipline them. Because I may be a timeout parent. I may be a parent that spanks every now and then. I may be a yeller. So you need to put all these things on the table up front so that you understand that this is not going to be an easy ride. It can be a successful ride, but people need to know coming in, not with their eyes wide shut.
Yeah, I like that, eyes wide shut. So, and you outline a lot of this in your book, which is so amazing, because things I never thought about in terms of the right questions we should be asking before we even get into any type of marital situation. And one of the things that you mentioned that's so key and imperative, we've all heard it before, we don't seem to want to do it, and that's counseling.
I tell you now that counseling is one of the key principles for any relationship of this magnitude to last. I did not have premarital counseling. And so I fell into a lot of different areas because I didn't sit down with someone that had the experience, someone that had the know-how that could help me navigate through this new family system. Listen, people, in order for you to be successful, you have to have counseling.
Yeah, and when should it occur? I mean, at what point should the counseling take place?
When the relationship is moving towards marriage.
Okay, when you know you're serious about this person and you're moving towards marriage. When you're in counseling, is there a time that the children should participate at any point?
Yes, you touched my heart with that one. I think the parents, and this is my opinion, I think the parents should go to at least 3 months of counseling, just the parents. And then after that 3 months of counseling, the children should have counseling. Because what you must understand, the blended families start from a loss. And they dealing with so many different pains and different things from, if they lost their dad or they lost their mom or there's a disconnection. So you want to make sure that you start off with a healthy emotion, a healthy psyche, and a healthy spiritual attitude going into this. So yes, I think you need to bring your children in after you have a counseling sessions with your counselor, because in a counseling session, a lot of things are exposed.
Yeah.
And see, vulnerabilities are exposed. And I think it's very important that you understand that you want to be successful. So bring the kids in and allow your kids to speak honestly, but respectfully. Allow them to share their views about the relationship. That's when the counselor can add their expertise to help these kids get across that bridge.
Absolutely, because oftentimes children will respond more favorably to a third party guiding them and telling them what to do versus the parent or step parent.
Very much so.
Okay. Indeed. So let's talk about some of the things that, one of the questions that I think a lot of people have is, when do you introduce the children to the new love of your life? Is there a time frame that should occur, or when is it right?
It needs to be past 6 months, and that you need to be moving to the next level. You need to be serious, because the thing about it, if you don't, and you introduce this person to your children and y'all end up not being together, what type of messages are you sending?
Yeah. Absolutely. And they could really grow to really like this person, and the relationship doesn't survive, which it may not survive in a marriage, but
it may survive in your dating process.
Right. So, yeah, that's
so
really
you hurt your kids again. And so all that counseling, think about this, all that counseling that you paid for.
Yes.
To get your kids healthy again, their psychological part healthy, their emotion healthy. You're dating this person, and you want to, you tell them about your children, but you don't want to bring them in until you spend some time developing a relationship with that person to make sure that is the right person.
That's right. And that this is leading to marriage.
Yes,
otherwise,
it should lead to marriage.
You say don't even introduce the children at all.
Don't introduce the kids, and you got to be comfortable with that. And you know what? You got to know that your kids deserve better.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's address, this is, by the way, Patricia Terrell with Make the Change radio show. I'm on air with Dr. Mangum, and he's the author of Blending to Make It, Ingredients for a Successful Blended Family. And we're talking about how to blend families, whether you're single or you're currently in a blended family environment. The call-in number is 1-800-450-7876. So let's address some of the blended family scenarios by starting out again with singles who are dating with kids, and the most important challenges that they are facing. Especially, let's start with someone who, give me two scenarios, the person who's dating without kids, but he or she is dating someone with kids. What would be the most important things that both of them should look out for?
They should look out how those parents treat those kids, and how those parents care about those kids. And if they're saying negative things about the kids, if they say, I'm struggling, never be desperate. If you show that you're desperate to get into a relationship, you're going to penalize yourself and your children. So you should look out if the conversation is, let's move quickly, and if you talk about their past relationships and you see a sign that they only been in relationships every 6 months, that should be a sign. That's a big thing that you need to look out for, because they're not consistent and they're not building themselves on commitment. And you don't want to bring somebody into your family system or with your kids or with a relationship if they're not committed. So you need to check at that. So
you were 22 and single, no children. What do you say to someone who is without children and they're looking to get into an environment with a family, with children? What's the best piece of advice that you can give them?
Take it very slow. Don't let people force you into something. Don't allow your loneliness to dictate that you're jumping off the boat into something that you can't handle. And talk to some people that have been in blended families that's been successful. You can talk to me. I know for sure, because I went in there green. I was, I was young. I was immature. I took on the responsibility. Understand that when you go into a family as a single person, you don't have children, you're taking on a lot more responsibility financially, emotionally. And so let's be honest. You really can't handle that. You having a tough time handling yourself as a single person.
Absolutely. Well, let's tell them how they can contact you, since you mentioned that. How can they reach you?
You can reach me. The best way to reach me is on my website, and it's www.drmangum.com/DUANEMANGUM. Please don't put Magnum. It's like my name is like man chewing gum. You can contact me that way, or you can reach out to my wife, her name is Michelle. Her number is 267-240-5365.
Absolutely. And you can find this information also on the website, www.patriciaterrell.com. And you can also go to the link. He's a featured guest where you can look where to purchase his book on Amazon.com.
Yes, Amazon.com. You can go to my website. You can purchase on Amazon, Copia, Barnes and Nobles, any of the electronic digital websites. You can purchase my book. But I'll be willing to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a 54-page book. I mean, a very easy read. You get down to the important principles. So let's talk about now the scenario of someone who are married. I mean, they have their own children. So we have now people who are dating. They have their own children. We talked about that. Let's talk about the blended family who have issues blending successfully.
Well, first of all, I guess if they have counseling, if they haven't had counseling, there's going to be some issues. But here's the thing. If you're blended right now and you have issues, it's never too late to get counseling. It's never too late to talk to someone that can navigate you through some of the tough times. But I want to tell you something, that if you're in a blended family and you really want your family to work, I just want to humbly and really positively tell you, get my book. Mm-hmm. My book will show you how to blend. I'm a successful blended family now. And the principles that I talk about in my book, I use every day. And so there's not loss, but you have to communicate. Again, you may have heard this before, but you must be honest with one another. You must have a conversation about some of the things that are going wrong. Don't sit there and be naive and say nothing is going wrong or we're going to make it. We can work it out. And the last thing I will say, if you're having trouble, if you are not trying God or trying a higher power to get you through some of the things, then you're going to have a tough time. But guess what? You have the opportunity now to change the time. You can go from surviving to thriving.
I like that. And I want you to share your story about now you were a single dad with two children and your current wife with a son. But I know you talked about a scenario where before you got married, the son just kind of surprised you and said, look, I need to talk to you, man, about my mom so I can find out what your intentions are.
Wow. Yes, it was an amazing conversation. At that time, I was getting ready to marry my wife now that I have, and she had a son. I think at that time he was 18 or 19 years old, getting ready to go to college. And he said, I want to have a conversation with you, D. He called me D. I want to have a conversation with you about my mom because I need to find out what your intentions are. And I need to find out what is your perspective on women? Have you abused women before? You know, how do you feel about me being outside of your biological kids? What are your goals? And that was a great approach. And so, gentlemen, if you're listening and you're trying to move in and you're moving into a family that has young men, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, even a little older, and they sit down and want to have a conversation with you, understand that it's our innate ability to be protective. You have to understand that you got to pack up your ego. You have to be humble. You can't walk around and say, I'm the man, or I'm older than him. No, you haven't been with his mother as long as he has. Be ready to listen. Please don't do most of the talking. Be ready to answer the questions. Understand the intentions about the mom and the children are coming from him. Also, what's your history on past relationships with women? And so my son, I don't call him my stepson, I called him my son, because I was just kind of blown away. And so I was very humble and I was very grateful. Such a mature, smart young man at that age. He was really concerned to him about his mother. And so what I said to him, I said, listen, I can't guarantee you this, but I will tell you this, that my goal is to be the best person for your mom, to take care of her, to love her, to cherish her, and to support you, to be that gender role model for you, to let you know that as a young man, you can be successful, you can do anything. And so that's what I brought to the table. So even today, we have such an amazing relationship.
Wow. And I can imagine, being a man, the ego and everything, that it has to take a strong constitution for you to not get offended as a man when a young person, like flipping that role on you, addresses you that way.
Yeah, you have to, first of all, you have to be secure in yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you're not, what are your underlining intentions? Because what I live by is that humility allows me to have a teachable spirit. To regardless if you're older or younger, if I'm listening to you and I understand the reason why you're asking these questions, then I can't get all bent out of shape.
Let me ask you this. We got so much to talk about. What are some barriers? Like, say, for instance, a dad coming into an environment where the mother has all daughters. What are some barriers and guidelines that the guy needs to be aware of, because they have to deal with women and girls differently?
Well, I think first of all, he needs to get a clear understanding of how this mother wants you to approach their daughters. And you need to listen to her. And you need to handle those daughters with care. When they get to the 12 to 13-year-old, you need to respect their privacy. You need to not, put yourself in a situation that causes fear or where you're uncompromising them. Mm-hmm. And so you need to, not only that, allow God to lead you and be listening and understand that you're there to be a role model as a dad that's coming to encourage them, to show them how real men should treat young ladies. And you deal with them differently, but you still deal with them as young ladies in the making.
Absolutely. And there's a line of appropriateness
Yes.
that has to be addressed. And that's a fine line that they walk.
It's very fine. And you have to understand, because of so much is going on with relationships, you have to understand that I got to be prudent and careful and cautious, that I build the relationship between my new daughters and not hinder it. So I must be willing to go through that.
Well, let's talk about disciplining. When it comes to disciplining, who should discipline whom?
My rule of thumb
Yes.
is that the biological parent should be the main disciplinarian in the household. Why? Because a bond has already been set between that biological child and that biological mom or dad. I think that you should have a say-so, but you should not talk about discipline without talking to that biological parent as a step parent. And y'all need to sit down to come together and be on a united front.
Yes.
In this relationship. A united front means that you're not going to always agree, but you want a healthy outcome. You got to be willing to take a back seat and say, you know what? We got to make sure that we're together, because step kids and biological kids will all play on their parents. A lot of step kids don't want their parents to be together now because they're concerned about the other people or the exes that was left out.
And they may want them to get back together. So they're trying to divide and conquer, right?
Exactly. And so if you are not on a united front, a house that's not together, a house that divided is not staying. Real quick, I like to talk about, if you're building a house, you better have a good foundation.
Yes.
So being on a united front allows you to build that foundation that the house and the family can stand through some of the troublesome waters. Mm-hmm. So I think a united front has to be put in place immediately, and be agreeable, because mom really knows best.
Yes. I'm sure the moms love you for that too. So let me ask you this. So basically you're saying that the bio parent should be the one to discipline, but I think you're also saying too that the step parent should be there during the disciplinary process.
I think they should, but I think they should listen and learn, because you have to blend your discipline. I believe you have to blend your discipline philosophies. Because the way my mother disciplined me, I could not discipline my kids the same way. I had to modify that. So be able to learn from one another. But yes, I think the stepdad or the stepmom needs to be in the presence, listening, not encouraging.
Right, absolutely. And this goes hand in hand with what you said earlier. Like, even before you get married and blend the families, you have to sit down and talk about disciplinary styles and philosophies and things of that nature. So when these things happen, you already know how it's going to be approached.
Yes, and I think it's important, because if you do that, you will have less conflict and less friction if you communicate that in the front.
Absolutely. It's so much to cover here. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about, let's say, for instance, we have two single parents with children. Is living together ever a good option to kind of test the waters before you actually get married?
No. The reason why I say no is that, there's a difference between the Titanic and a regular cruise ship. If you test the waters, you may be available for the Titanic. If you don't, you may have a chance to enjoy a cruise ship that's going to bring pleasantries. I say that because you send the wrong message. And what if it doesn't work out? What if you find out that this person is not the one, and I've exposed my children to all this negativity, maybe abuse, maybe not just negative, but maybe favoritism, or maybe I don't care. So when you do that, you put yourself in jeopardy, and you put your children in jeopardy. I know we don't want to think about this, but that person could abuse your children.
Right.
Because now you have opened up your home to a person that you thought you trusted, and they have broken that trust. So be very careful. So I don't think it's a good arrangement to test the waters. Allow God to allow you to be married, to be in covenant before you go into this relationship.
Okay, now here's a big one, and they're like basically two that I want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk about the issue of finances. That is so huge, and I know you can't. I know you can't talk about it all right now, but that's a big one, because let's talk about it from one standpoint. Let's say, for instance, you're a single dad. You've already saved for your child's college fund, and now you're going into a marriage, a blended arrangement with a mother, and she may have some savings for whatever they saved for. Now you're coming together. How do you even begin to blend those finances? And what if an emergency happens? Do you go in and sacrifice the college fund that you saved for your child for the new family? How do you work out those dynamics?
I think you need to talk about that in the beginning, and you need to set a precedence. I personally don't think that you should go into your children's college fund that you saved over the last 10 years and take your emergency. There's a problem in managing finances if that emergency is happening and you want to use the funds. I honestly think that you need to stick to your guns. Lovingly, encouraging, and say, you know what? I'm not going to use my college funds that I saved for my children, because guess what? I've already shared with them that I've saved for your college.
Yeah, and that's not favoritism.
It's not favoritism.
Yeah.
That's just real wisdom and honesty.
Absolutely. And that, again, is big enough to seek counseling on that.
Very much
alone.
So. I think you need to seek counseling on how the finances is going to be handled, especially with college education. And then if you're wise enough and you say to your wife or husband, no, I'm not going to use it, but let me look at how we can better your financial investment for your college kids. Let's try some other options to take care of the emergency versus using our kids' finances for college to take care of that emergency.
Yeah, and it's like a strategic planning session that has to take place, because if you're bringing on additional children, like you said earlier, one of the things you need to talk about is where will you live. You may want to start looking at living someplace that will allow you to now save more money.
Without a doubt.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, you have to make that decision early.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the holidays. That's always an issue, and I think we have a few moments before we have to conclude here. But let's quickly talk about, how do you get everybody together during the Christmas, Thanksgiving holidays, or other holidays when you have the steps and you have yours?
Well, I think one of the things, you have to pre-plan. I think 6 months out of a year, 6 months to a year, you need to pre-plan how this is going to work. And you set some definitive guidelines with the X's as well as the biologicals and steps. This is how we're going to do it. And then be wise enough to rotate it. Don't do it every year. You should not be hosting Christmas and Thanksgiving every year. But we should be able to sit down and talk about it and strategically plan how we're going to do this, because if you plan, you won't fail.
Yeah.
And you make everybody aware this is what you need to bring. Do it like you're doing a family reunion. If you do that, then I think it'd be smooth. But if you don't plan, if you wait till December, then you're going to see a lot of problems.
A lot of problems and stress and things of
Yes.
that nature. Okay, so as we prepare to close the show, let's talk about some of the most important advice that you can give to our different categories. First, we're going to start off. What's the one thing that singles who are dating with children can do right now to make sure that the relationship that they're currently in, that they're taking the right steps to ensure blending success?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important that they understand, that you make sure that they're serious about it. Make sure that they're very serious. If you're trying to go in a relationship, don't play any games. No more casual dating. They got to be ready to step up to the plate to understand that this is serious, and I want the best for my family. I want the best for us, but this is no longer about you.
You're looking at that person like, are you marriage material?
Exactly. Are you the one that I'm going to walk down the aisle? Are you the one that my kids are going to grow with and we're going to enjoy life? If not, then I need to have the courage to say, you know what? I need to wait on God. Mm-hmm. You know, a scripture said when a man findeth a wife, for you ladies, he findeth a good thing and obtain favor from the Lord. God did not ask you to put your searchlight on. He asked you to wait and see. The thing that helped me when I was single, I was satisfied in my singleness. And when you get satisfied in your singleness, when you understand that God has that precious Esther, or that precious Ruth, or if you're a gentleman and they have that Boaz, not Bozo, ladies, not Bozo. Mess around with a clown, you're going to get clown stuff.
You're making me laugh over here, but this is serious stuff here too. So let's talk about what you recommend for people who are in blended families already. They're having some issues. What is the most important thing that they can do right now?
I think they should go to counseling. They should be willing and honest enough with each other to go to counseling. You know, they should be willing to make sure that this relationship comes slow. One psychologist said normally a blended family takes 4 to 8 years to really mesh and blend. But the recovery steps are slow. And you got to recognize, both singles and married couples, that God wants you to have the best. You deserve to enjoy true happiness, to have a healthy relationship, and know that you're special. Know that blended families are special and they deserve the best. You single mothers, you single dads, don't just settle for anything. Get the best. Because guess what? I'm tired of divorce court. So guess what? We can be a significant example to the earth to know that, listen, I'm a 21st blended family. And guess what? Brady Bunch. And guess what? We're making it.
Yes, indeed. And I like what you said about your principles, your 8 key principles, which they can get your book, Dr. Mangum. You can go to Amazon.com and you can go to Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
But you said that these are not groundbreaking principles, but they can be groundbreaking in your life if you apply them to your current situation.
I totally live by that, and I will guarantee that they can change your life, and you want to change.
Absolutely. Well, time's out. I've had fun. And this has been such an enlightening show for me, Dr. Mangum. And thank you for joining us to share your principles for blending families successfully. Tell them again the name of your book and where they can get it.
The name of my book is Blending to Make It, Ingredients for a Successful Blended Family. You can look me up on my website at drmangum.wix.com/Dwayne Mangum, or you can go to Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I want you to get this book, not because I think that, I'm trying to earn an income. I want you to get it because you deserve to win. You deserve to go from surviving as a blended family to thriving. And you deserve to be an example in this earth that, guess what? I'm special and I'm making it. So please, please give yourself an opportunity to get these navigational tools so that you can be successful in your blended family.
And save your families, because in order to change the statistics, we have to change at the individual level. And we can make this happen. So thank you again. I'll have to have you back because we want to talk about the finances. That's huge. And the holidays are coming up too, right?
Yes. Patricia, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my heart passion. I'm very passionate about this because I love families. I love people. And I know that through my own experiences, somebody can be helped to be better. Again, I look forward to coming back again.
Well, I can feel your passion, and I'm sure our listeners can too. So to our listeners, thank you, everyone, for listening today. And remember to visit patriciaterrell.com to listen to this and previous episodes and to also find out where you can get Dr. Mangum's book. Be sure to tune in next Saturday for more lively discussions about how you can make positive changes in your life.
Remember to tune in to Make the Change every Saturday from 12 noon to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also visit with Patricia at www.patriciaterrell.com for links to social media, email, and blogs. Thank you for listening today, and remember that changing the world starts with changing you.